I just wondered why everybody's obsessed with games now. I mean, I like the games too, but it's not like we spent all our time doing this for the past 5 decades. We didn't. Why do you think it's caught such interest and such, I mean, on fire lately?
Yeah, so I have a couple answers to that. First of all, I would challenge that like we didn't used to do that. I think people are always playing games. It's just digital games in particular, these little like snack-sized things, I think is a relatively new phenomenon, and that's just like because we have these tiny little computers that we carry around now. And so I think before then, you know, obviously every paper has its funnies. There's always long been puzzle books. And I don't know about you all, but me and my siblings make up games all of the time. So, you know, you play your family games, you play your board games. But these snack-sized games, we have a lot more like waiting around and commuting and reasons to use it. But I also honestly think that the pandemic just opened up this wide window where, you know, for at least a year, I know at least for a year and a half, I was by myself with my dog. And I just hung out by myself all the time. And so playing these games not only is a way to pass the time, but it allowed us to connect with our friends and our family. Raise your hand if you know, solved a crossword like over Zoom or like played code names digitally or yeah, right? You know, so I think that people were looking for ways to hang out with each other. And that kind of expanded into this, what we see now, which is like now we have these family group chats or these friend group chats of people being able to communicate with each other. And it's been a really, like my favorite thing is seeing the way that it's kind of reinvigorated some people's relationships. It gives you something to talk about with people that maybe you wouldn't always have stuff in common with, or, you know, family members that like you want to keep in touch with, but, you know, you don't see each other every day. You don't live in the same city. You don't live in the same state, right? But you can share your Wordle score, or you can ask for clues, or you can race in the mini. So, you know, that I think is probably the thing that most gets people excited.
Ooh, more questions. This is Emiko from Here and Now.
Yeah.
For those of us who do spelling bee a lot, no names or anything, we have noticed that, or I have noticed that this particular week happens to have a whole series of really brutal combinations. And I'm just curious if you could talk about like, and like the one that we just did is actually like it has the center E. It's easy to come up with words. Can you talk about how your editor sort of mixes up the difficulty over the week?
Yeah. So So it's a couple of things. We have testers now. So we send them the spelling bee in batches of the week. And so we kind of rely on them to like, we kind of have a sense of what's like easy or hard, but sometimes our testers will like bring up reasons that it's difficult that we hadn't thought of. And so our testers will let us know if we have too many difficult puzzles in a row or too many like easy puzzles in a row, and it just goes by too fast. We also try to vary the word count so that it's not too it's not the same every single day. So I liked this one because it's a little bit longer. But sometimes when it gets much longer than this, it can really feel like a slog. It can really feel like homework. So we're constantly thinking about, you know, the length, how many points you need. Obviously, not just the letter combo, but which letter is in the center. And then and then the testers also let us know. And then obviously some letter combos kind of lend themselves to more esoterica. So we picked this one because like pretty much all of those words are colloquial, everyday used words. But there are some spelling bees where there's like, you know, a chunk of like, because when I was going through, I really wanted to use etymology as the pangram puzzle. And that one was just like really hard, even though you have the ology. There was just a lot of like esoterica that just like wasn't very fun to solve. Or that might have been, you know, annoying to do in a live setting. So yeah, our testers help us out a lot. And then honestly, like the editors do have a lot of leeway. Like I think it's not just our competitive advantage, but it's like what makes us special is that the editors are handpicking not just like the arrangement of the puzzles, but like what puzzles go on what day. And sometimes Sam warns me in advance and he's like, I chose violence. And I'm like, okay, thanks for letting me know. And then how many of you use the spelling bee forum at all? Thank you all so much. I love the spelling bee forum. So we, on the days that we know are going to be hard, we kind of like let the moderation team know, like, hey, it might be a bloodbath in there. We're so sorry. So yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, but we try not to be mean, but sometimes, you know. I have some questions here that I'm
Okay.
gonna go
And we have
through.
some in the room too, but you go.
Okay,
You take
yeah,
some
yeah,
of the Slido questions.
So, someone named Megan asks, did you play word games as a kid? And if so, what was your favorite? So I actually didn't play a ton of word games as a kid other than Scrabble. My parents are immigrants. My mom didn't speak English until I was like 5. So we did play a lot of games, but she's more of a Sudoku girly. Her English is excellent. You know, she's been here now for like 37 years. But, you know, so we didn't play a ton of word games in the beginning, but a lot of strategy games, a lot of card games. I love card games, and any kind of strategy game. You know, I'll play whether it's like an RPG or it's a turn-based board game. Yeah. Are there any? Oh, I'll go down in
Here,
order.
I'll do an
Is
audience
there-
question while you're waiting.
Oh, yeah. Go ahead.
Hi. So I just want to say the New York Times games are one of the few sites that are not blocked in my kids' school. So you have like big middle school and high school fans in Waltham. So well done.
Kiddos.
My husband was not able to be here, but he wanted to know what dictionary you use because sometimes he's like, I know that's a word. Why isn't it in that?
Yeah, so we use the Oxford Dictionary for all of our games, except like Wordle is like a more custom word list, but we use Oxford. So that's why there may be some words that you're like, this is a word, it's in Webster's or it's in a different dictionary, but it's not the dictionary that we use. I'm not sure why we use Oxford over Webster, but that's what we use. Yeah.
Slido question?
Yes. I have one. Is there an effort to have connections be different difficulty levels on different days, like the crossword? There are different difficulty levels on different days, but there's no rhyme or reason behind why it's hard or not hard. Winna is like a very special brain. She has a really special brain. I give her as much runway as possible. Like the spelling bee, we also have testers test those games in a week batch. So same thing, we try to make sure that we don't have too many hard days or too many easy days in a given week. But we kind of run them when Winna wants to run them. Actually, one of the hard things is that Winna will like wake up and be like, the order is wrong. And then like we have to change everything and we have to be like, no, Winna, please, like keep the order. It's so stressful. So, you know, that is a little bit more loosey-goosey.
Audience question.
How do you become a tester? And is there a game that you've thought about that is like this experimental, like that you'd love to have exist? Since you talked about making games when you were younger.
Great question. So how to become a tester. Right now, we now have a database we've been using actually people who have gone through our fellowship program. I don't know how many of you know about it, but I started the Diverse Crossword Constructor Fellowship 4 years ago now, as a way to kind of, because you kind of see the same bylines over and over and over again, but we have an open submissions process. So we're like, okay, so people don't feel like they can submit to us, or they like crosswords and they don't even know how to make one, or a lot of people don't realize that people make them. I'm like, why do you think a robot would make this dad joke? Like, absolutely not. And we did try with AI. They write terrible clues. Thank goodness. But yeah, so right now we use the fellows because it's a way to kind of keep them in our network. We know they love puzzles, and it's going to be a good range of people. But every now and then we'll seek people out to kind of round out. We try to have a range of age groups and cultural backgrounds. We don't want everyone to be Gen Z. We don't want everyone to be Gen X. So sometimes we handpick. But and then for your other question, what game would I love to have? I really like visual logic games. We currently have one in beta right now, only in Canada. So if you're a Canadian or you have a VPN, you're playing a game I really like right now called Pips. Pips are the dots on the dominoes. It's based on dominoes. I love dominoes. I grew up playing dominoes, of course. And so you basically have to arrange the dominoes to fulfill the conditions of a region. And that condition could be all of it has to equal a certain number, or it has to be greater than a number, or all of the squares have to have the same number. So it's like a combo of like math and visual logic that I really, really enjoy. I also personally, I love narrative games. I love like story-based, choose your own adventure type stuff. I don't know. I pitch one every year and they're like, LL cute. I don't know that we'll ever do one, but I pitch one every year. I also really love, I love card games, and I especially love what you would call like a deck building game. So I really love Slay the Spire. I broke that addiction with a game called Balatro, blah, 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 blah. Has anybody played that? It's kind of like poker. Yeah, I'm obsessed. I love it so much. So any kind of card game. And I think card games are cool because I love the tactile nature of it. You have an opportunity for like visual beauty. But also it's just something that we know how to do. Like we know how to get a deck of cards. I would love to have a card game.
Slido question.
Yes. How often do players find words the editors hadn't? Honestly, not very often. It doesn't happen that often. If there's a word missing in the spelling bee, for example, it's on purpose. Occasionally we miss one. And again, we're people. We mess up. Sometimes we're tired. Sometimes we're hungry. I don't know. But we have. So when I started, we did not have a tester process, and we only had fact checker for the daily crossword. I have introduced the testing process in part to try to cover. At first, there was some resistance, right? Because we like to think that our work is perfect, and we don't necessarily. It's hard to get feedback sometimes from people who aren't putting the same thought as you are into it. But, we make these games for people, and also people sometimes, when you get so focused on the technical components of building a game, you can kind of forget about the real world around you. So, when people do, we take them very seriously. We, any kind of call out for a missing word, for example, I'll double check with Sam and he'll be like, yeah, we left it out. Or he'll be like, I missed that one. I'm going to add it to the list. So we do take it into account. Yeah.
Any more in-audience questions? Okay. Got one over here.
What happened to Vertex?
Okay. So Vertex, it wasn't too hard. So Vertex was very technically broken and difficult to fix, and had a very, very small audience. And so we kind of got to this point where it was like we could invest resources to fix that game, or we could invest resources to fix other games or make new games. And we really want to make new games. And that requires, I think people don't realize just how much technical work goes into a New York Times puzzle, because it has to appear in all surfaces. It has to appear for iOS and Android. It has to comply with different app stores. It has to work on desktop. It has to work on, everywhere. And also, I don't know how many of you realize, but games really kind of spun up less than 5 years ago. And so we had a lot of tech debt. We had a lot of things that existed, but were built in different systems by people who no longer worked there. So we're kind of flying the plane as we're simultaneously building it and fixing it. So when you fly and you're like, girl, is that duct tape on that wing? And I'm so high in the sky. That is kind of what we're doing. So I think like with Vertex, we had to make the really difficult decision to be like, look, like, can we invest in another area? There are a lot of Vertex fans on the team. Vertex was one of the first like non-crossword games that was created, so we know some people really miss it. But you know, you couldn't really play it everywhere. It was an infuriating experience on mobile. You know, I think it was just kind of difficult to maintain.
Slido.
Yeah. Next. Oh. Rosalita asks, how far in advance are the puzzles written? It depends on the game. So the crossword, we get them submitted by anybody. They submit through a portal. We've gotten faster because we digitized, I hate that word, I'm so sorry. I feel like I'm in Digimon, but we digitized the whole crossword process when I started. When I came in, it was a zoo. The puzzles were all like printed out by Will and they were like at his house, just like ready to catch fire. It was so terrifying. And then like to edit them, it was like a local like InDesign file that they were passing around and nobody was keeping track. And so like sometimes people would get the wrong version and it was horrible. And then we had an intern just go to Will's house and like scan them all. And then we realized we'd underestimated how many puzzles we had in the archive by 20%. We had so many puzzles. So we made that all digital. It's all in a system now that's gorgeous. But puzzles, like we get them, and a puzzle that we accept, we may not run for 3 to 6 months. Some puzzles we've held for even longer, either because they need to be timed, you know, so like, for example, in 2024, somebody had sent us an Olympic themed puzzle, and obviously we had to wait like a year for it. Also, sometimes we've just lost a puzzle. And then we're like, we're so sorry, we'll run it right now. So, so the crossword can take a while, whereas spelling bee, connections, strands, Wordle, those are all supposed to be baked in. Like we're now at allegedly 3 weeks in advance. And same with the mini. That is not always the case. And then I have to go and like run around and be like, please, I'm slithering on the floor. I'm dying. Like, please file it. Because if like anything happens or like, you know, let's say like a news event, and this has happened to us before where like something happens in the news and then we just happen to have a puzzle that's like about the thing that happened in the news. And every time it happens, it's horrible for me personally. So like we need to have enough wiggle room to like swap things out. So we're about 3 weeks ahead for other puzzles, but it doesn't always work out that way.
One more audience question, and it's got to be a real good one.
Yeah.
Who do we got? All right. I'm trusting you.
I'm just going to ask it with confidence, and then it's a good question. Hopefully. I'm assuming that you know some about the demographics of people who are playing the games. Is there anything that surprises you or surprised you about the demographics of New York Times Games fans?
Nailed it.
Not really, but there are happily for me more women than I expected, because I think, you know, when I was first like thinking like, oh, you know what, maybe this is the job for me, I'm gonna go for it. And I think this happens to a lot of people like me or a lot of people around my age or younger, where the impression of people are into things like the crossword is a particular kind of person, like very pedantic, often a man who's gonna yell at you, and so it makes it kind of like you're a little wary getting into those spaces, but the demographics don't really work out that way, so that is cool. I think that like the games are really accessible, but obviously I would love for, especially the crossword. I love the crossword. The crossword is such a work of art to be like, and the more, now that I'm not just a solver, I see how it's made and I see what goes into it. It's like a true craft that like, it should cost $1 bajillion to play crosswords, to be honest, because it's so much work and it's so much craft, and people kind of just expect it to like a computer can't actually do it. Like, like people have tried. It can't do it well. So I would love to have a broader audience for the crossword, more young people into it. But I think, kind of like we were talking about before, people like the bite size. They like something that's really digestible on their phones, and the crossword takes some time. If you're, some of these people are so fast. Have any of you been to the American Crossword Puzzle Tournament? Cool. Me neither. No, I've been twice. I don't go anymore. But some people can solve like a crossword in like 3-4 minutes, which is wild. But like for me, doing like a hard crossword is going to take me like 45 minutes, like a Friday or Saturday. And I think a lot of people don't slow down for themselves like that. And it is full of like, I think we've really shifted the content, not to be too modern, but like we have shifted it away from some of the like very storied, olden timey stuff, but it can still be really frustrating if you don't know what happened in the 80s, which I don't know what happened in the 80s. I was a baby. Okay.
We're at time.
We're at time. Oh my gosh, someone by
Everybody give it up for Everdeen Mason.
Thank you.
I mean, I think this goes without saying, but play New York Times games. You just
please.
learn how much work goes into those, so please play them. Tell all your friends to play them.